celebration and observance of Black History Month. Black History Month, we decided as veterans, we wanted to sit down and have a conversation about Black history and its relevance when it comes to veterans and mental health. So the theme of this podcast and this whole series is going to be the Black veteran, their families, and mental wellness. In this particular event, this is the first of 6 episodes that will occur throughout the month of February. This is the first. We'll have 2 episodes per week, Mondays and Thursdays. The Thursday episode will be Black veterans and military sexual trauma. So I want to welcome everybody who showed up for this event. And I want to first of all introduce our guest that we have here, the Black women veterans combat. This is the key that it's not women veterans, they're combat veterans who has graciously said, hey, they wanted to have be part of this program. So how you doing, everybody?
Hello.
How are you? Great. And what I'm gonna do first is I want to first of all have you guys introduce yourselves to the audiences, and just tell a little bit about what you did before you went in the military, then your military, and then after that. So I'll start off with Lakeisha. Lakeisha, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, my name is Lakeisha Jones. I am a United States Army veteran. I was military police. In the military, I served, went to Iraq, but I had 2 children. At the time I was dual military, and I had to make a decision on keeping my children together or separating them in the event that my husband at the time and I would be deployed at the same time again. So of course my children won, and here I am.
And so you were saying that you and your husband was also dual military.
Yes.
Okay, and what did he do?
He was a mechanic.
Okay, mechanic. Thank you. Welcome to this first episode. I feel like it's history because this is the first time something like this happened, as far as I know, and I hope it doesn't stop. So thanks for being on this show, Lakeisha. And now, to no further ado, Kim, how are you doing? Introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Kimberly Mullenbrook. I go by Kim. I spent 24 years in the Army, 21 of which were active duty. I joined the Army as a Private E1 when I was 18 years old. I was medical supply. I've worked in a warehouse. I worked in a hospital. I was a supply sergeant for a dental clinic. Loved it. Wanted to see what I could do to serve better, to make more of an impact. And that's when I requested the Army to allow me to become an officer. I exited the active duty Army in a green to gold chapter. In other words, I was allowed to go to school, get my undergrad degree, and come back in as an officer. And that's what I did. When I came back in, I did pretty much what I was doing in a much larger scale. I was branch ordnance, and once I became a captain, I became a logistics officer. I did that for the remainder of my years in the military. And as with Lakeisha, I was also married to another service member, and we had children. At the time, we were pretty much, unlike Lakeisha and her spouse, we were doing a lot of tag team where I was gone for a year and then he was gone for a year. But at that time, we were already divorced. So my children had a biological parent in the United States at all times. And
Thanks.
Here I am.
Thanks, Kim. We're going to talk more about what's going on as well. And finally, I want to introduce our final panelist, Quindola. Quindola, please introduce yourself to the room.
Hi, I'm Quindola Crowley, and I'm an Army veteran as well. I did 28 years in the Army. 14 of those were active duty, and 14 of those were reserve. I have 2 commissions. I started out in the reserves as a engineer officer, and then I went on active duty as a medical service corps officer, and I was actually a social worker on active duty. Led to a lot of different jobs, but I think one of the things that I like to share that's most compelling about me is I'm the daughter of veterans. I'm a veteran, and I'm the mother of a veteran, and I was in command, in battalion command, when my daughter was in Iraq, and that was actually one of the most compelling and challenging times of my career, being worried about her, because she was there in 2005, 2006. It was pretty hot still.
Wow, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So you heard 3 Black combat veteran women, and you're gonna just sit back, be relaxed, get ready for this ride, because this is gonna be interesting. Hi, my name is Tony Williams. I'm actually the president and CEO for Veterans Council and Veterans. And like my guest, I'm a combat veteran, did 24 years, 8 years enlisted, just like Kim, and 16 commissions. So that means I'm bilingual. I can speak both enlisted and commissioned. And when I finally got out, I wanted to still, because my dad was in the military 20 years as well. Same thing as Condola. So we got a lot of these things in common. You know, I grew up in the military as a military brat, and then I did 24 years. And so that meant that the military was part of my DNA. And so I created Veterans Council and Veterans because I wanted to still continue to take care of the soldiers and their families. The reason why we're having this, why are we here? Why are we here this night at 7:30? Well, one of the reasons why is because, as everybody knows, we've had a lot of racial tensions starting way back when we started doing the election campaign, and race has been weaponized, and we got stuff going on all over, and we're going to get into that as well. And I thought that, as a president of a nonprofit, I asked God, what can I do? And he says, Tony, you need to sit there and start helping people understand each culture. And that's what I'm doing for this whole month. We're going to take the time, sit back, and start learning and listening about each culture, because each military have a subculture, and I hate the word subculture, that also is part of it. And we're going to learn about that for the next 6 episodes. And let's get going. So the first question I want to ask the ladies, and I'll start with Kim. What was it that said, you know, I want to do this. I want to do this. When I contacted you, what was it, something that said, yeah, I want to be on this podcast? What was it that motivated you, Kim?
What motivated me to say yes is, first of all, the fact that you inquired about having African-American, Black, or women of color in the panel who were combat veterans who are now mental health professionals. And why is that so important to me? And I don't want to take the whole time, because I know my other battle buddies or my other fellow colleagues in the field probably share the same information. So being a Black woman in the military, of course, you know, people say, oh, there go the grace card again, but being a Black woman in the military is a whole different kind of worms. It's an experience that only we can experience. And I did not understand how different a can of worms that was until I got my commission. When I got my commission, it felt as though I was even lesser of an asset, so to speak, when I was as a non-commissioned officer. So I had to prove myself 3 and 4 more times above what even Black men or even the white service members had to do. And I felt that. So that's why I wanted to help in any way I can to let the young ladies who are out there, regardless of how they're serving, to know that they're definitely not alone, because we've walked that walk.
We really appreciate that you coming on.
Thank you.
And how about you, Condola, Mr. Battalion Commander? What made you say, yeah, I want to do this? What did you expect? So
I wasn't sure what all to expect, but I will tell you that what I thought was really important is talking about mental health and how it impacts veterans. You know, we talk a lot about how it impacts service members and the stigma, and how the stigma has not gone away, that they're still battling the stigma of mental health issues with our service members. But, you know, how are we taking care of our veterans and our families? And then how are we taking care of even ourselves? And so just to have that conversation, I thought was real important. And in the midst of racial trauma, which is an evidence-based, it's coming out, it's been studied. So that trauma is real. It is a little different than PTSD, but similar. And so these kinds of issues impact us. And so just wanted to have that conversation, be a part of it.
Thank you, and I really appreciate being on here. And that last one, Lisa and Lakeisha. Lakeisha's like my buddy, because, you know, I met Lakeisha. She's been on my interviews and stuff, and I feel like she wants to help as well. So Lakeisha, tell us why you decided this was a good thing to come on. Why did you say yes to this episode?
I said yes, twofold reasons. One, because as a Black female who was enlisted and a non-commissioned officer in the Army, I had to walk out something that my mother instilled in me. And she instilled in me from a very early age that I came into this world with 3 strikes against me. I was Black, I was a female, and I was a Black female. So I always had to work 4 or 5 times harder, as Kim mentioned, than my counterparts, than my Caucasian counterparts, than my male counterparts. And so in the military, I experienced that, but I also experienced that on the side of when I was struggling with my mental health after experiencing combat and then experiencing military sexual trauma in a combat environment. And when I went to the doctors, it was downplayed. I was basically handed, minor medication, like take this and you'll be okay. My suicidal ideation, my struggles weren't taken seriously in the same manner that my Caucasian counterparts' issues were. And so this is a forum that is necessary to be heard. This is not a forum to bash the military, but it is a forum to bring to light some of the things, some of the racial disparities that occur amongst the Black population, especially for the Black females.
Yes, thinking, and I appreciate you too as well, Lakeisha, being on here and making this thing a reality. So, and let's talk a little bit about, how old were you when you joined the military, and then did you have any kind? Did you notice that there was something different between not just you being a female, but a Black female as you was going through the military? So, how old were you? And we'll start with Kim. How old were you first joined the military, and did you notice a difference of how you were being treated versus the other people?
Yes, thank you for asking. I was actually 18. I came in enlisted right out of high school. I didn't really see a big difference at that time because, again, I was low enlisted. I was treated just like the other ones. But I noticed as I made rank, believe it or not, you would think it would be different in a positive way. But and I'm not here to say that every day was a bad day. Of course not. However, again, like Lakeisha said, I definitely had to prove myself. And yeah, I know you asked about when I first came in, but just a little bit about, like I said, when I switched over, when I became the butter bar, I was in, once the Army went modular back in 2005, I was actually the only highest ranking above the rank of E6 because they were standing up all these different units. And I went to a forward support company, a company that supported a field artillery battalion. And that's when I knew how it was to be a Black female officer in the Army amongst a bunch of the dominant culture, men, white men in an infantry battalion. In a field artillery battalion, excuse me.
Wow. And you, Condola.
So I joined when I was 17 years old, right out of high school. My parents signed for me, and they wouldn't allow me because both my parents were in the military, my mother and my father. So my mama wore combat boots. Yeah, you know where that comes from. They used to say that. So yeah, my mom did. But they would not allow me to go active duty. So I went in the reserves and I went to school. And I was part of an early commissioning program back then, some 30 plus blah, 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 blah years ago. They used to have this early commissioning program. So you do, I went to basic training and AIT and all that. And then I came back and I went to school and did 2 years and was supposed to get commissioned. That was the beginning of my issues. So I didn't get commissioned with my class. I had to fight a year to get commissioned, and I would have been commissioned at probably 19, 20 years old, but I had to fight for my commission. So they were looking for reasons not to commission me. I ended up I was 21 when I got commissioned. It was an early commission. And then I went into the engineers, which was predominantly white, and went to Officer Basic, which was predominantly white and predominantly male. And you just weren't designed to succeed in those areas with all those men because of the things they did and the way they carried themselves. It was a good old boys club. But I will say even later on, there were incidents, even when I went active duty and was in the Medical Service Corps. there was a time where I got into a situation with my commander, and he came, and I'll never forget this, because he grabbed my backpack that I had on, and he shook me, and like a rag doll, and I felt assaulted. And so I went to tell him that I did not appreciate him shaking me like that. And the words that he used, because at the time he was like, "Oh yeah, I met your husband at the at some event we had with the unit," and he said he sure is a big old man. And I felt like he was getting ready to say something else, and it came to the tip of his tongue. And so the whole incident felt inappropriate. So I went to him and I talked to him about it based on the counsel of another senior Black officer. But when I went in there, I felt abused when I walked out, because not only did I get scolded for talking to him and telling him my issues and concerns, he said, "I thought you were part of the Good Old Boys Club. So obviously you don't know how to take it. You can't." So I'm not part of the Good Old Boys Club, and apparently I've never been a part of the Good Old Boys Club. But I have some positive experiences, but it is a challenge when you are in a predominantly male environment, and when you're in a predominantly white male privileged kind of environment. There are some challenges in the military. They still exist.
Okay, so for those of you guys on Zoom, I just put a poll up. So please, you have the opportunity to fill out the poll so we get a pulse on what's going on. So one of the things I want to, and I know that Lakeisha kind of touched on it, and I don't want to get too much deep into it, but can you kind of just real cliff notes on Lakeisha, like you said that you were going through your own mental challenges, and then you had the sexual assault. What happened? I mean, give us a real quick cliff notes on that.
On the mental health challenges,
yes,
or the sexual assault?
Yeah, sexual assault. Yeah, well, I'm going to have a sexual assault Thursday too, but just give us some of the like both of them. The mental health. Did they come into each other or just separate incidences?
They came into each other. I deployed in 2003, so everything was really, really hot. So anyone who has been to Iraq or Afghanistan or deployed to combat period can understand 4th of July is not a fun day, because it sounds very similar to being in a combat environment. And of course, walking into a combat environment, you're walking into the unknown. You don't know from one moment to the next what's going to happen. When you have experienced death all around you, there's a lot of fear. And so I just came back different. I was on edge. My patience was short, and I was struggling, and I didn't really know that I was struggling, or even understand what was going on. It actually took for my husband at the time and my grandfather to tell me that I needed to speak to someone. And in all honesty, I went to go speak to somebody just to prove them wrong, because I thought I was fine, but it actually turned out that I was struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. Then I had a TBI, so the combat experience plus the military sexual trauma, all of that. And then you take into consideration childhood trauma that I've experienced. So everything just came to a head.
Did you feel like you were being supported by your command?
I did not. I did not feel like I was supported by my command. I remember my commander asking me, how was I doing? And I angrily looked at him and said, "You don't care, so why are you asking?" And I felt like he didn't care, because he continually was running us the same day of the week at the same time on a mission, trying to get promoted, because he had already been passed up for major twice. And he was putting our lives in danger, not taking into consideration we're in a country with people that are not stupid. They provided us the satellite phones we were using, so they weren't as behind as what we were trying to make them seem. And so I was, I didn't feel like I could trust my command to support me. And when I reported the military sexual trauma, I was treated like I had done something to bring that on. So I definitely felt no support whatsoever.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Is that the reason why? I know you did 10 years. Is that the reason why you decided to leave the army?
It played a major role in it. It did play a major role. I had actually put in a warrant packet, and I was pregnant with my son. And when I found out that I was pregnant, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna have to split my children up, so I'm leaving. And my warrant packet came back approved during that process, so I still had to make the decision to stay or to go. And you know, my children won hands down.
Right. Yeah. So I'm sorry. I mean, sorry to hear that. And this is like, maybe I ought to invite you on for the MST one, because that's something that really need to be a deep dive in what's going on when it comes, especially women of color, and then trying to deal with the command and your family. You had a family too. How many kids did you have at that time?
I had one in 2003, and then I had my second one after he was my my R&R baby.
Okay. So I know you guys are all three combat, but did you guys, any of you guys serve in the combat zone?
So can I just say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Lakeisha's story is the story of a lot of women, and I'm not saying that to minimize it. I'm saying that to help it be known that there are so many women. Her story sounds like my daughter's story. My daughter, when she was there, suffered MST. Her unit went out on, they didn't get any sleep. They just kept sending them out. And every single time they went out, they got hit. Every single time. So she saw so much. And as a mom sitting back home, there were times I could just feel the energy of it. And I'm like, something's going on. And then when she could get to a phone call, she would let me know, they got hit again, or this happened, but I would have to keep her in the fight. So I'd hang up crying, thinking, oh my God, what are they doing to her? But while I'm talking to her, because I'm military and I know I have to encourage her and support her. And I'm like, well, go talk to the chaplain, go talk to combat stress, go talk to somebody. And she was the only female. Like, I'm sure there weren't that many females around Lakeisha because she's MP. Stephanie, my daughter, shouldn't use her name. My daughter was a rigger. So she's already part of a small crew that is unique. But now the riggers are out there just, running convoys, and there aren't any other females, not there, maybe one other female that was there, but it was, it's a lot.
Now, how did you, again, because even though you're military, you're also a mother. And I don't know if the mama bear came out, whatever, but how did that make you feel when your daughter's sitting there saying, hey, mom, help me?
I will say the mama bear came out. I talked to my commander who knew some folks and made some phone calls. I think that's the only thing that kept my daughter from getting kicked out of the military, actually, because she had a voice and she would use it, and probably wasn't always appropriate. And at that time, she was still young in her career. And she ended up doing 12 years. She retired medically from, the TBIs, the MSC, the broken down body, from all the things that the military does to you. She ended up getting out. But yeah, I did make some calls because I'm like, you guys can't keep going out like this. I do know that the company commander got relieved because of what they were doing and how they were doing it. They brought in a new battalion commander, but I don't know that that person was actually relieved. Might have been time for change, but my command called that commander, the battalion commander that was over there. And I really do believe it was probably the one thing that kept her, because what they like to do is discipline you when you're struggling and hurting, rather than acknowledge that that behavior is coming from, the occurrence or whatever it is. She had been assaulted. She had been abused. She had been threatened. She had been choked by an Iraqi. You know, her lieutenant had issues with her being a female and put a naked Iraqi in the back of the Humvee with her. They're trying to carry somebody along, and he choked her while she was driving. You know, she had been through some things. And so when she made it clear how she felt about some of those things to her lieutenant and her commander, they didn't really appreciate it. So rather than actually address the issues, you know, they were going to try to discipline her.
Kim, can you relate to this? I mean, you were a commander, right? When you became officers. Can any of this stuff sound like something familiar with you that you've gone through?
No, fortunately, I have not experienced military sexual trauma, but I have experienced a lot of, again, the inequality and stuff like that based on being either the only one or close to the only one. So I did take command while we were deployed. I deployed to Iraq in a MST, not a military sexual trauma, but a MIT team, a MIT team. And there we were all like 11 of us, one team leader, 2 non-commissioned officers, and a bunch of captains. So for the most part, it was, you know, equal. We just ran a lot of missions for a long story, you know, for a long time, and it's a long story. But when I deployed to Afghanistan with a brigade combat team, I was the assistant S3, the current operations, the forward operations, everything the S4 did, I mean, the S3 itself didn't want to do. That was my job because I was the only other officer in the S3 shop. But mid-tour, mid-deployment, I became the commander of the distribution company. So my company ran a lot of missions, and we were in RC East. And if anybody heard about RC East was hot even then at that time. My battalion didn't lose anyone, but my brigade lost a lot of people. So there I was a little bit more at home within the battalion, but then again, we were the bald-headed stepchildren. We were a brigade support battalion in an infantry company. I mean, excuse me, I cannot speak today. We were a brigade support battalion in a infantry brigade. Oh my goodness, long day. So yeah, there was a lot of coming at the bottom for that, but I really honestly felt a lot of the inequality and the treatment to us as women and Black officers, women, when I was in the field artillery battalion as a forward support company maintenance control officer. That's when I really felt it. And that's when I knew it might not get any better. And sometimes it did, but a lot of times it didn't. I really had to prove that I had to, so to speak, double time when everyone was marching just to be good enough.
So, thank you. And
so, you know, Tony, let me just say this, as women of color, there's a lot of, as Quindola mentioned, there's a lot of backlash when we speak up. We're expected to be quiet and play our part. And when we speak up, when there's something that we see that is wrong, whether it is something we're experiencing firsthand or we're speaking up on behalf of a battle buddy, it becomes a problem. I actually, from a couple of friends that I still maintain contact with, grew the nickname Miss Regulation, because, you know, I was the one, I'm gonna speak up. My mother always told me not to let anyone take advantage of me and to speak up, and, you know, and that I'm entitled to have a voice, but there's a way to do it, to make sure that I knew what I was talking about and that I was also respectful. And so I learned my regulations and I knew them from cover to cover. I could quote them, and that was important to do, because if I wasn't correct in my speaking in terms of the regulation, then you know, it would become, my support would be even less. I was problematic because I was speaking up, but even then, the support that I, you know, that I did receive probably would have been non-existent. And even though my support was minimal, it would have been non-existent had I not known the regulations. And, you know, unfortunately, I didn't know all of the regulations. I didn't know all of the support that was available to me. And what I did know, in some instances, I didn't trust it because of the conversations that I would overhear of people standing around and, laughing and joking. So I'm supposed to go see this person, if I'm dealing with certain things, but I've just heard them make off-color jokes, whether it was sexist or racist. So no, I'm not going to go see that person because I don't trust them, one, to keep confidence with what I've just experienced. And I don't need the whole camp to know everything that I've experienced and what I'm feeling. But two, I'm not going to trust you because your character has been demonstrated to me as being flawed.
And I tell you, I can go on this forever too, and maybe next Thursday we have our MST. We need to talk more about this. So, who did you feel that was your biggest supporter? All three ladies, who was your biggest supporter in the military?
You said in the military?
Yeah, in the military. Who would you say this person here got my back? And you go, Cleese, you can start first. Who would you say had your back in the military?
I didn't have anybody that had my back. I never felt like I had my own back, and some of that came from my own mistrust from childhood trauma, but also because, again, just seeing how people would switch up, or how they wouldn't, they would complain about things, and when it was time to actually step out and address it with leadership, they wouldn't say anything. They'd be silent. So I didn't feel like anybody had my back outside of myself and God.
So Kim, who would you say had your back?
So that's a tricky question for me, and most of it has to do with myself. So I've always heard, especially when I switched over, to get a mentor. But I thought, my work will speak for itself. And later on in my career, I realized that not so much, because even if your work speaks for itself, if it's not documented in your evaluation reports, it really won't speak for itself. So once I realized that it helps to get a mentor, I did my last 3 years in the active duty Army as an officer. I served at Rock Island Arsenal, and I was fortunate where there were a lot of heavy hitters there. I call it heavy hitters, a lot of brass. In there I met a lot of people, but I think at that point it was a little bit too late to try to get a mentor and to try to get someone on my side. So I did meet some people who attempted to guide me in the right direction and attempted to, look out for me, so to speak. But at that time, it was like narrowing towards the end of my my relationship with the Army, my career. So it didn't really make that big of a difference. And I would tell anyone, if I would have known then what I know now, get a mentor, and get a mentor who is actually going to definitely look out for you. Your supervisor cannot be your mentor. Your supervisor has a whole different mission as your supervisor. Your mentor is that person who is going to, like Tony said, have your back, and let you know, so that you know what to do and how your report card is supposed to read, your evaluation report is supposed to read. So yeah.
I think Kim is right on, because that is critical. I learned that early in my career, to get a mentor and to be a mentor. So at some point down the road, as I grew in rank, I became a mentor. But I participated in the groups, like the ROCs, which is for Black officers. We had, anytime we could come together to support each other and then do something positive in the community, but just building that network, and really keeping that network, because you all know how small the military can be, as large as it is. But when you move around, you get to meet up with the same people. And once you develop that network, and as people grow, they grow you too. And that becomes the good word about you.
Right.
Because like you said, it's not always on paper. The paper will get there, but it's those phone calls that really make a difference. And being able to call somebody and say, hey, I know Captain Kim, I worked with her over here, and it could be a male telling a white male, it won't matter. But it's just the fact that there's another voice that can give you some validity and credibility, makes a huge difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Funny that you call. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I didn't have that experience because in the same manner, being enlisted and a non-commissioned officer. But what I did learn, I had some great leaders. I did have some great leaders. I don't want to paint the picture like all of my leadership was poor leadership, because that's not the case. I've had some great leaders over the course of my career, but I also, learned some great lessons from the individuals who taught me how not to be as a leader. And so it was very important to me to be a mentor, to my, subordinates, and teaching them the things that they needed to do and helping them be successful in terms of getting promoted, getting their education, setting themselves apart from their peers, because of what was not taught to me. So I had to kind of do the struggle and catch up. So I made a point of, no, I'm not going to I'm going to make sure that my counterparts get what I didn't get.
Right.
And I just noticed in the chat that Lalissa was saying that she works for the health claim appeals and VA health complaint appeals, and she's mentioned that a lot of women, I don't know if they're women of color, got that backlash as well. So let's just shift from you're about ready to get out of the military. A couple of you ladies retired, another one just got out. What made you decide to say, you know what, I want to pursue? I think Quinola was always in it, was always doing it. What made you decide of going from MP and MS and the medical service to being a mental health provider, or pursuing a career in mental health provider? We'll start with you, Lakeisha.
I became a mental health provider. Truly, social work actually chose me when I was a child from certain experiences, but getting out of the military, as once I got out and had dealing with my own mental health struggles and not having the support and not having the providers that looked like me available to me, so they didn't understand what it was to be a woman of color. So I wanted to be able to do that. But then also, like I mentioned, I was married. So at that time of being married to that service member, he had chronic PTSD, and he was struggling, and he wasn't getting the support that he needed. So it was very important to me to make sure that support was available for him as well. And I also wanted to remove the stigma, because there is a major stigma that says, where a lot of service members think that it's a sign of weakness to get help, and it is actually a sign of strength to get help. So I just wanted to be someone who was there to not only demonstrate through my own personal experience, but also to be on that end to help support them as they take that step towards strength. Even now, when I work and I talk to service members about stress management and anger management, I let them know if I'm going to refer them to behavioral health, it is not because I think that there's something wrong with them, but it is because I know that they can live successfully with the diagnosis when they are utilizing the resources and the tools that are available to them. But as long as they continue to prevent themselves from using them, they're not going to be successful. They're going to make emotional decisions that are going to be detrimental to their career.
Mm-hmm. One thing we want to encourage throughout this whole series, we want to encourage African-American veterans, the families, to seek help. It's not a sign of weakness, it's actually a sign of strength, and you're taking care of your family. I just want to make sure we mention that. So Kim, why did you decide to go from what you did in the Army to being a mental provider?
If it's okay, I'd actually like to say something about what Lakeisha said. I love the fact that she said there's a possibility that in not getting help, someone can make decisions that can be detrimental to their career, or I would add that even to their families. I know I have a colleague of mine who told me, she said, we don't treat substance use disorders. We don't treat addiction. We treat anxiety. We treat depression. We treat PTSD. We treat all that stuff wrapped up in addiction. Why? Because in self-medicating in order to escape, that's what we do. And then what happens, because I have some, as a commander, I had to literally make some UCNJ packets for the battalion commander because people will come up hot on urinalysis, or people had, wouldn't come to work the next day, were what is called, I forget the name of it.
AWOL.
AWOL, but when they don't make it to formation because they were out all night drinking. So
missing movement.
Yes, well, both actually. Thank you.
Failure to report, yeah.
FTR, failure to report, yes, and missing movement, absolutely. Because of, you know, a lot of it was drinking in order to mask their problem. So I love the fact that Lakeisha said that. And with that, I don't know if I can, my story can definitely, might not measure up to hers, but I actually, as I said, when I was serving in the military as a leader in different levels, I realized that mental health is to the utmost important. Yes, we can do all the workouts, we can do, you know, the nutrition or whatever, but when we're not mentally healthy, we might as well just be, you know, out of regulations, not in accordance with 600-9, which is the height and weight regulation. But I say all that to say that at that point, I realized that once I retire from the Army, whenever that would be, I definitely wanted to serve in a different capacity. And then I got to a point where I'm like, if I don't go towards my grad degree, my master's degree, then if I don't do it now, I don't know if I'll ever do it. So I began right before I retired. And once I retired, I went to school full time. Now that I do this full time, I am a licensed professional counselor candidate in the state of Colorado. I have no regrets. While I was in the Army, I was in this box. My entire adult life for 20 something years, all I knew was the Army. So I am aware that the Army is made out of individuals from different, all over the place, and I get that. However, I was in that box that I didn't see outside of the box. Now, as a civilian, I see so much. And I think Lakeisha Quindola said, you know, misrepresentation, no representation from us. This year, well, 2020, my caseload got so full, and then now I have a waiting list because people, when they call me, they say, I saw your picture and I wanted to talk to you, because there aren't too many of us out there. There aren't too many Black women, and who, especially, I'm in Colorado. So Colorado is very, 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 very dominant culture. So when they see my picture, my profile on Psychology Today, they call me, they send me an email. I literally have a waiting list because people are looking for someone with whom they can relate, someone who can understand. We had that whole thing last year with BLM and George Floyd. A lot of people were calling me saying, my counselor is going like this whenever I tell them how I feel. You know, we had that stuff at the Capitol. They're saying, my counselor is going like this when I tell him how I feel. So I love the decision that I made. I have no regrets, absolutely. And I'm glad that I went for my advanced degree so that I can do what I do and help those, because a lot of people, they need that voice, they need that help. You would not believe how many child abuse cases would be reported if it wasn't for someone who can speak on that person's behalf. Like, I heard a story about a little girl who was accidentally burnt with hot water when she was getting her hair braided. I get my hair braided. I get it. When it's done, it gets dipped in hot water. You know, I see Lakeisha shaking her head. We know that. And if you don't know that, someone who doesn't understand the culture would have said, oh, mom burnt her. No, if you know what's happening, you would know it wasn't intentional. I mean, yes, we have to be careful. We can't just rely on our culture to do things that are harmful to each other. But at the same time, I can understand how you can get your ears burnt because somebody's hot combing your hair or whatever, right? So that's not a child abuse case. That's a mom, okay, let's be more careful next time. Or baby girl, you can't move when mom got the hot comb close to you because you might get your ears burnt, right? So representation is key, especially for us.
Okay, and I'm gonna let Condola, after Condola finish talking, we're gonna get real. We got like 20 minutes left. I wanna start talking real talk. Once Condola, talks about how did you, well, I think, well, go ahead. I think you was already doing it when you were in the service, but talk about how you chose the mental health profession as your career.
So I was holding my ear so it wouldn't get burnt while my grandmother was pregnant. That wasn't a cue. So yes, I have been a social worker for a number of years, but I came on active duty in '92. Shortly in '93, after I finished up my MSW and, you know, did a major career change, but I had been working in the field of social work as I was in the reserves as an engineer. So at that point, I felt like I was pulling my life together, coming on active duty as a social worker and the military, because I enjoyed the military at that time, and I still do. It's like you said, it's even with all the things that have occurred, it still becomes a part of your DNA. So you take the good components of it with you. I still do what I do because I'm still serving. You know, I could have gone off and did other things, and I am more in an administrative role. I've always managed a clinical practice, but in the role that I'm in now, I currently don't have a private practice, but I still see a lot of family members and work with veterans, but I run a large service. And so I don't get engaged in a way that I used to, but I still impact and influence care. So I want to make sure that my daughter and those that have served after me, and my mom, because my dad is gone now, but those that have served before me and my generation are getting the best care, and not afraid to say, if you need help or if you need mental health help, go. So that's why I work at the VA, and I am still a part of that. I wasn't always at the VA, but I choose to be now because there are so many changes coming about. And I see the homeless veterans, that just breaks my heart. You know, I've been out on the street. I've walked down the street and went to talk to somebody that was homeless. Hey, are you a veteran? You know, here's my card. This is what we can do. Come over. And then I'll send, you know, if I don't hear from them, I'll send a team back from the homeless team to go talk to them and see what we can do to support them. But, you know, my parents were also clinical providers, psychologists and substance abuse. So I guess it's still all in my DNA, the military, the social work, helping, clinical side.
Okay, so thank you very now. Now it's time to sit there and get loose, get ready, put your slippers on, because we're gonna get real talk. We got another 15, 20 minutes of real talk. All right. And the first thing I want to start talking about is what went through your mind and the people around you when they saw what happened with George Floyd last year. What went through your mind? And I'll start with Quinola. What went through your mind, and how did people react when they saw that video?
You know, I'll use our work. I probably shouldn't, but I will say it was, everyone was egregiously impacted in some way. The people around me, you know, took it to heart. And the social workers and the clinicians and people that I work with were, it was a significant life-changing event. You know, it was changing for my family. It was changing for the community that I'm a part of. I think everybody has been changed by that.
Wow. And how about you, Kim? What was your reaction when you saw that? And then and the people that you were seeing? I know you mentioned it earlier about it, but what was your reaction?
Yeah. Well, I was actually on my way to work when I first saw it. It popped up on my feed. Someone had shared it, and I literally pulled over to get some more information, to Google it, to see the video. And to be honest, when I saw that, all I saw was my family's from Panama originally. However, we are descendant African-American and some European and some other stuff in there, but we are brown people. So when I saw that, all I saw was my brother. All I saw was my cousin. All I saw was my nephews. All I saw was my son. And again, at that time, I said representation definitely is key. And yeah, it brought me to tears, and it got to the point where, you know, I have my son, one of my sons is an adult, and he's 22 years old. He has a beard. He's not necessarily the biggest person in the world. He's only like 5'10", you know, but he goes to the gym. My son, of course, everyone is biased, but my children, none of them, well, one of them is 3, but the other 3 have never been in one fight in their lives. You wouldn't know that by seeing my son, right? So the wrong person seeing my son, you know, or the wrong cop would be a knee to his back until he's no longer breathing. So my other son is 16. He's 6'1". He already has a mustache. He doesn't keep a beard because he wrestles, so they make him shave it, but he has a mustache, and he very much so looks like an adult. Tamir Rice was 12, had a toy gun, was killed within 5 seconds or whatever the exact number is. So yeah, I remember when I was 12, we played with the boys played guns and robbers. Cops and robbers and playing with guns, but now they can't even play with toy guns. So I say that to answer your question, that's what went through my mind. That could be my son, that could be my brother, that could be my cousin, that could be my friend. And all for what? Like, for what?
And how about you, Lakeisha?
I echo the sentiments of both Condola and Kim. You know, I have a son who at the time was 15. He's now 16, and he was getting ready to start driver's education, and he became very disinterested. And I had to ask why, and he doesn't want to drive because he said, I don't, what's the point? So they can kill me. But he's also experienced, walking to the store, being followed or stopped by the police. And so it's just difficult because as a mother, I have to have conversations with my son that Caucasian people don't have to have with their sons. I have to tell him, that 16-year-old that likes to wear his hoodies, take your hood off, give good eye contact, keep your hands out of your pockets, don't make sudden moves, make sure that you're saying yes sir and no sir, yes ma'am and no ma'am. Don't speak aggressively. These are things that I have to teach my son to stay alive. And when I saw the footage of George Floyd being murdered, because we're going to call it what it was, when I saw that footage, I was devastated to know that this man cried out for his mother,
his mama,
in his last moments, to mama begging and pleading for his life. I was devastated. I had to, I have a therapist, but my therapist was white. So I didn't want to talk to my therapist. So I had to process that with some of my colleagues. We processed it together. And it was necessary for us to process it because when you see clients, it's not about what you feel. When you're seeing a client, you have to place your feelings on the back burner and allow them to process whatever it is that they're feeling and whatever it is that they're experiencing. And it's not the time to be in agreement with them or to, to be an ally. It's there to be their support, but it's not the time for, us to chalk it up like, homegirls and homeboys. That is the moment for them to process through their experiences and not to be so it was difficult initially to ensure that there was no trauma bonding or counter transference or transference occurring in those moments because this was definitely a devastating time and for everyone that experienced it. And the thing of it is I saw that it wasn't just my Black clients that were devastated. I had some clients that were Caucasian, Latino. I had clients that were, of different ethnic backgrounds that, had their feelings regarding what was happening in the world, and some are still expressing their feelings of other things that are continuing to occur, unfortunately.
What we did was, and like you said, there were Black and brown people, yellow people that also came, and was really the veterans that were coming. And so try to create a safe space for the clinicians of color to just have a conversation. But actually, the only way I personally felt comfortable sending something out other than what the National VA social work wanted to address it and address racism in the VA. And then shortly after that, the president at that time sent out something to the federal employees that they could not do any of the diversity training. And so we continued to do these focus groups, which wasn't counted as training, but I sent out something to our clinicians to say, here are some ways to address racial trauma with the veterans, because the veterans are going to come in and want to talk about it. And you can't be afraid of the conversation. And so if the conversation comes up, these are some of the ways that you can engage in the conversation. And just giving everybody permission to talk about it with the veterans, if the veterans bring it. In Houston, you know, we have a huge minority population of veterans. And so they are very vocal about lots of things. And they're coming in to see us, and we need to be able to meet them where they are.
Yeah, you know, I tell you, and my wife, you know, FYI, my wife is actually a retired police officer. So you can imagine, now you have, everybody have different experiences, different angles when you look at this here. So now one of the things I want to talk about as well is, you know, the big elephant in the room is COVID-19. How has COVID-19 affected your family, and then of course your counseling? And I'll start with go ahead, Keisha.
Well, it's affected my family because we stay in the house, which is not much of a change. My son and I are both pretty introverted, even though it may not seem like I am. But it has affected us in we can't spend the quality time outside of the home. We can do it in the home, but of course my son is 16, so he ain't hanging out with mama but so much. So his way of quality time is I'm eating dinner with you. That's sufficient. You get your one hug a month. That's sufficient. So, but it's changed that because I've had to become the homeschool teacher, working from home. Of course, you know, telehealth kicked, really kicked up about 10, 20 notches. So it's just changed the way that we do things, and it's also allowed me to slow down, because before the hustle and the bustle was so much with sports and everything else that he had going on in his life, everything that I had going on in my life. So it allowed us to kind of slow down and kind of just enjoy life and not be doing so much.
And now, Condola, you are at the VA. Well, you work at the VA. So how did the COVID-19 affect you guys?
Well, we are seeing a lot of veterans through telehealth, and our older population of veterans are just trying to catch up with some of that. Some of them aren't interested in it, and so they had a hard time initially trying to log in or being asked to take these iPads home and not really wanting to engage that way. The younger population, like my daughter and beyond, the 30 somethings and below, they were really interested because that's all they do. They sit on an iPad or a phone or something, but we call it the digital divide. So we've been giving out iPads and cell phones, to veterans that may not otherwise be able to access the VA through telehealth. And, all the mental health staff went home, or a high majority of them, and they were having sessions through telehealth. The physicians are having sessions over the phone or through some kind of video conference, and we're learning from this. Maybe there's a new way to do business. Maybe we don't need as many folks. Maybe we can hire more virtual staff.
I would never met you guys if it wasn't for the virtual part. So there's a lot of things. There are some pluses and minuses for this. And Kim, finally on you, how did the COVID affect you for COVID-19?
So I didn't like it, and I still don't. And the reason for that is because I don't like how it affected my population, the population I serve. A lot of people were laid off. The goal when I initially decided to go into this career field is to work for the military and or the Department of the VA. But because I'm not fully licensed, I'm not doing that as of yet. So I am in a private practice. I work for someone. I don't have my own private practice yet. So I do serve the civilian population, so to speak. And yeah, some people were laid off, like initially in March of last year when this country decided to recognize COVID as a thing, because I'm not going to say when COVID became a thing, because it was a thing before that. So not only that, but also people had to make up their minds, could they either work or be at home with their child, because good luck doing Zoom to someone in kindergarten. So different things such as that, I saw it. I mean, when I say when my caseload went from like 10 to 15 to like up the roof and having a waiting list within a matter of months, or not even months, a month or two, I'm telling you the truth. I mean, it's just, it has anxiety, PTSD, depression, or even things that were already existing and people were managing well. It was exacerbated after that. Oh, by the way, I still have to go through the pandemic myself, because as everybody in this panel knows, we're not exempt. We don't live in this bubble where we don't have feelings. So I too have children. I too am a divorced co-parent. However, my co-parents are not in the same state, much less the same city with me. My support system is my family's all over the US, Michigan, Texas, right? So it's just, I have a high schooler right now who, yeah, we're all biased, but my baby is very intelligent. He's NHS. He's doing, if you're familiar with the baccalaureate program, and just the first semester, which was last year, the end of 2020, the first teacher conference, they were like, yeah, he's not doing okay. And he's not doing okay because to him, he's like, am I really in school? Because I'm actually in my bedroom, like my bedroom. So our place of refuge where we come home after the end of the day has now become the workplace for some people, has now become the classroom for some people, has now become life for some people. Like he was playing sports. He was, teenagers. You remember when we were teenagers? Yes, a long time ago for some of us. But remember when we were teenagers? I was talking about me, Condola. I promise I was talking about me. That high school is social hour. Yes, we're expected to do well academically, but social hour, he plays sports. He wrestles, he does track and field, but he wasn't able to wrestle this year. He wasn't able to do a lot of things. So that really, he's working through that, of course. And then, so I say all that to say, some people who were able to stay home and work from home and have very nice, clean houses and very well cooked meals, I'm not that person, because guess what? Not only am I an essential worker, I cannot work from home. I have a daughter who has been diagnosed with autism, who gets therapy, in-home therapy. So I cannot make my place my workplace, because she lives there. That's her home, and she's doing therapy at home. So I have to come to work and hear people's stories all day. It makes a safe place for them all day, and come home and still deal with the pandemic at home. So no, don't like it. If I could just, which is, first of all, I wasn't going to vote for the previous administration anyway, but that really did it, because you had your own MI team telling you that there's a possibility of a pandemic, and you ignored it. And now when it hit us and so many people died, and it resulted in what it resulted in here in the United States, now you want to wake up too late. So that really did it for me. I know we're not talking politics, but I had to throw that in there because of how I dealt with the pandemic, how it hit me and my family and the population with whom I work with and who I serve. I was not going to vote for that administration. I did the first time anyway.
Can I just say this too? One of the things that I've noticed in terms of clientele is we have had a lot of, and Kim made mention of it, we've had a lot of teens and youth from middle school all the way into high school, and probably even the younger populations. I just don't work with that young of a population. But the middle school to high schoolers are having a really hard time because they're not able to socialize, which is a part of their development. And you can only do so much socializing on, social media or Facebook or Facebook Live or Google Duo or FaceTime. You know, they need person to person interaction, and they're not getting that. So it is affecting the mental health of our elderly, because they're not able to connect with their families. It's
They're
affecting
isolated.
the health of all adults, and it's affecting the mental health of our youth. So the mental health field, for insurance companies, if they don't understand the importance now of continuing telehealth therapy and approving it, I just don't know what to tell them. Mental health is necessary. And COVID-19 has demonstrated that to the hilt. We knew that from combat, going all the way back to World War I, World War II, and beyond. But even now with COVID, it's not just for service members that it's necessary. It is necessary for the entire population.
Now, and we're going to stick in politics just a little bit. What was your guys' reaction when, I know we keep hearing about racism, but we also had a couple of historic things that occurred through this election. We have our first African-American Caribbean vice president and woman, and we have our first African-American Secretary of Defense. What was your guys' reaction that you think it will make a difference moving forward when it comes to race relations? And I'll start with you, Quindola.
I just think it's the most phenomenal thing that ever happened to us, to have a female woman of color as a vice president. It shows little girls and women that, yes, we can. You know, we can get there. It's time for some significant change. And I don't know that any of us really anticipated that this would be the woman. You know, everybody has some thoughts about, you know, their politics, but it is refreshing to see a woman of color to step in. You know, I've got granddaughters, I have daughters, and they are just besides themselves, just knowing that, you know, we have a female vice president. You know, I'm not even talking about the president, whatever.
Like, yeah, he don't exist anymore. Like, yeah, we came to see her.
Yeah, we can see her. I'm with her.
And Kim, how do you feel, and then do you think it'll make a difference when it comes to relationships, race relations, and moving forward?
Yeah, so the first mark that we made, and I said we as a people, was with Obama. So clearly we had a Black man in the office for 8 years. 8 straight years. Thank you. I cannot speak today. Thank you. For 8 straight years. And so that kind of cracked the ceiling, so to speak, a little bit. And then, you know, she shattered, you know, with help of her, you know, people who had her back, as you said earlier, she shattered that ceiling. And why is that important to me? That's because, again, like Condola said, you know, I have a 3-year-old, you know, I have my 25-year-old is a girl, but she's not interested in politics. And I don't know that the 3-year-old will, but she could if she wanted to, because we're talking 30, 40 something years from now. She's only 3. God knows what she could do. So yeah, that's important to me. And it's important to me because we have been devalued and stereotyped as emotional creatures who, depending on the time of the month, we might make certain decisions. And I find that funny because men don't realize that anger is that emotion too. So we're emotional, we cry or whatever. Well, men get angry or whatever, you know, they think they're so logical, but they also have other emotions, sadness and, you know, crying. That's not, there's other things in emotional. But to answer your question, I was happy to see that. I am happy to see that. I am happy to see that. And I know I'm not a Greek, but I know she's the sorrow to a lot of my friends. So they were just over the heels with that. They were very happy.
You know, I'm going to ask the same question to the guys, because, you know, we're going to have the Black Veterans Combat males next week. And I know everybody gets just focused on Kamala and kind of ignored Lloyd Austin. But and to see if that same happen with those guys next week. Will they ignore Kamala and only talk about Lloyd? We'll see. So, like, Lakeisha, how did that make you feel? And do you think it'll make a difference moving forward with race relations?
On January 20th, I heard the glass breaking.
Yeah.
And so the glass ceiling is no longer present, because we have kicked it down. And so now I already knew that I could in whatever I wanted to do. My daughter already knew that, but now my granddaughter can see that, not just know it, but see it. So I'm definitely excited about the fact that we do have our first female vice president, black female vice president, and she's a trifecta because she's female, she's a black female, and she is also of Asian descent as well. So she's trifecta. But I'm excited about that. I'm going to err on the side of the black girl magic, melanin popping. I'm truly excited about it. Now, in terms of change, I don't leave it to her to make the change. I believe that in order for change to happen, we have to come together collectively to make change. Oftentimes, we put it on one person that is in an office with the expectation of them making the change. But we fail to realize that there's a responsibility of us all collectively to make that change. So it's not on her. If she doesn't execute it, then what have we done? We want to point the finger and say they didn't do, they haven't done, or what have you. But what have we done to help make it happen?
Well, Keisha brings up a good point, because when Obama was in office, they talked a lot about the things he didn't do. But what they didn't realize was he didn't have the majority at the time. So he had a difficult time pushing things through. But we have an opportunity now, and Lakeisha hit it on the point. We have to be supportive, and we have to do our part, like getting out the vote in Georgia. That was a big deal. We made a huge shift in turning Georgia blue. We've got to continue to turn the tide. We need to vote with our feet, with our money, with our support, and how we're supporting, big businesses and other areas. We just need to stop and think and be methodical and analytical about the choices we make and how we support, politically our community, and use our resources to help make the demands that we want. If we take our money out of some places, some things will change. It's like the bus boycott. Don't spend with, I'm not saying don't spend with Nike, but I'll just use them as an example. But don't spend with Nike, or don't spend with whatever, we're feeling is Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby is racist and has, a different agenda. And maybe, whatever their areas, we need to be very conscious about it.
I think
we have to use our voice, and as social workers, it is a part of our ethics to advocate for the marginalized and the underprivileged. It is our responsibility to empower and to help be change agents for the oppression. We can't just sit back and think that all we're supposed to do is therapy. There's multiple layers to this, to what we do, and we have to do that. We have to be active. So I'm just excited because I've actually, become a new member of Alpha Chi Epsilon Sigma Social Work Sorority Incorporated, and that is a part of what we do. Advocacy, we're change agents, we empower and we strengthen. ACEs. So.
Yes.
So I know we're getting close to that timeout and our time over. And so what I want to give you guys later, and I really appreciate you guys being here and giving out your insight. But if you want any last closing words, and we'll start out with Kim. If any last closing words before we close this off.
No, actually, I just want to say what Lakeisha said. A lot of people, it's great to be in the office. It's great to provide therapy. It's great to do all that. And I know social workers do a little bit more, a different agenda than we do, but we are meant to change systems, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. So sometimes it requires us to get out of the soapbox and do more than just stay in the office and provide therapy day in and day out. So yeah, I thank you for mentioning that, because a lot of people don't realize that there's more to mental health than to sit in the office and give the people with whom you work therapy. Definitely changing systems. We can't change the whole country, but we can change our piece of the pie. And there's so many of us out there. We can definitely unite and change for the better. Outside of that, I really don't have any other closing words. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here amongst people who are on the same mission, such as myself, who have walked the walk, different places, probably was deployed at the same time in the same camp, don't even know it. But at the very least, we all can relate to some degree to what each other's story is. So yeah, thank you for that.
No worries. Thank you very much. And also, Condola, you got any parting words?
No, but I too am just honored to participate and be a part of the conversation. Thank you for having me. And I'm committed to serving and continuing to serve until I get to that next retirement. So yes.
Lakeisha, any closing words for you?
I do. I want to say this, especially because we are Black women combat veterans. I want to say to all of the female combat veterans that are in active duty service members that may be tuning in now on the live, or that may tune in later, that we may have grown up under the mindset of what goes on in this house stays in this house. That has been something that is traumatizing to many of us, and we need to come together and seek the support that is available to you. Don't not talk about the things that you've been through, or not get the help that is available to you. Get that help, and don't let anyone tell you that the help is not available. Don't let anyone undervalue you. You are valuable. You have much worth. And and I just want to, I always leave this with people. This is my business tagline: healing is intentional. So be intentional about your healing. Heal on purpose.
Heal on purpose. Right.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies, for this. The first episode, the first getting out this series that we're going to continue to have. And I want everybody to know that's on here right now. Our next event is going to be on Thursday at 11 o'clock. You guys don't know how much these ladies sacrifice just to do this. This is how much they really wanted. They all are on different time zones and trying to meet that thing, and they still made it. They still made it done. Made it happen. So I want to definitely let you guys know that about the ladies and why they're here. On the 4th of February, we're going to have Black veterans and military sexual trauma. I want that to be authentic, so we're going to have a chance on that. Maybe we get one of the ladies to come out there and be part of the two. It's two of them right now, and we're going to just talk about the differences that they may have experienced. That you guys probably hear the same thing, but they said it. We just don't know it when we see everybody together. And on Monday we're going to have the males, so they'll probably talk more about Lloyd Austin than Kamala. And then the following, the 11th, we're going to have families. And so I'm very excited about the families, because there's very little information and coverage when it comes to Black veterans, their families, and mental wellness. And that we need to talk about that. I know that, in fact, Condola has her 2 grandchildren that stays with her. Both Lakeisha and Kim have kids. And Kim has one like 3 years old. And so they should be part of the conversation when we talk about Black veterans and their families and mental wellness. So stay tuned for that one on February 11th. We have an all-star cast when it comes to that. But I'm really excited that we're going to have on the 18th, we'll have Dr. Tayana Harris, who is a PhD in research. We're going to talk about research and the Black veteran, and we'll have a lot about what's going on there, what's there and what's not there. And finally, I'm excited. On the 25th of February, we're going to have a town hall. We're going to be authentic. We're going to talk about stuff that our whole point is to educate America. So we need to be authentic and what we feel and what we hear and everything like that. So on the 25th, please stay tuned for that. So until then, this is Tony Williams from Veterans Council of Veterans. See you Thursday. Bye, everybody. Round of applause. Okay. So we still, okay.